It's time for Supply Chain Now. Broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good morning. Scott Luton, Adrian Pertil, and Enrique Alvarez with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. We have a wonderful conversation teed up. Adrian, Enrique, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Scott. Great to see you again. Looking forward to this show as usual. Thank you.
We are too. Enrique, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having us. This is our favorite show as well, and we have two amazing guests, so it'll be fun.
Well, and you've already earned a new moniker, which we won't reveal. We'll save that till later in the conversation.
Go ahead, it's fine.
Well, we've had a great time on this series. This is a really special series for our Supply Chain Now team and, of course, Vector Global Logistics. So it's all about logistics with purpose, right? We're featuring folks and leaders and organizations that are all changing the world in some way, shape, or form. And we're very pleased to partner with Vector to make this series happen. Hey, quick programming note. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to find us wherever you get your podcast from. You can search for Supply Chain Now, subscribe for free, money back guarantee on any content, but check out other similar conversations that you don't want to miss, just like this one here today. So with no further ado, Enrique, Adrian, you ready to introduce our guests here today?
I'm ready. Let's
do it. Got a great conversation teed up. Let's welcome in Tracie Ohonme, Executive Vice President and co-founder of Samaritan's Feet. How you doing, Tracie?
I am doing great. Thank you guys for having me this wonderful Friday afternoon.
We're excited to learn a lot more about you and your journey and, of course, the story over at Samaritan's Feet. And you've got a colleague that joined you, Angela Carlson, Executive Director of Finance and General Manager, also with Samaritan's Feet. Angela, how you doing?
I am doing well. Really appreciate you guys having us on today. And, this is now going to be mine and Tracie's very, very favorite podcast.
Wow, man, right out of the gate. Well, we really appreciate that. It's her, your ears may have been burning now for several weeks as we've teed this up and really looking forward to learning a lot more about your story. And by the way, Angela, for folks that may be listening or watching this interview via video, we've already talked about your beautiful artwork just over your shoulder. So love that. That kind of lights up our interview room a little bit, doesn't it? So
sure does.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not that's a magnolia blossom, which I should know, having grown up in Aiken, South Carolina, magnolias on every corner. And it looks like also across your other shoulder, is that from Augusta National?
I was going to ask that as well, but it looks like a little too much water. Are we right?
Yeah, it's a little too much water. It's actually a bridge in France.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. International appeal just over your shoulders. I love that, Angela. All right, so let's see here. We're going to get started. We're going to get to know you, both of y'all, a little bit better before we dive into Samaritan's Feet. So let's start with you, Tracie. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to get to where you are here today.
Yeah, I would love to. So on the personal side, I am a wife, a mom, global citizen. We have, my husband and I are co-founders of Samaritan's Feet. We have 4 children, ages 27 down to 18, 3 girls, and in true African style, our last child is a boy. So you got to get that boy in there and in the African culture. So he's here, surprise, surprise. So 27 down to 18 keeps us very busy. On the professional side, we have started Samaritan's Feet back in 2003. With the goal of providing 10 million pairs of shoes to 10 million individuals in the next 10 years. That was our big, hairy, audacious goal when we started. My husband is originally from Nigeria, and that's kind of the catalyst for what propelled us into, besides, servants of what we're called to do for Samaritan's Feet. So we're in our 18th year now, believe it or not. And logistically speaking, we started in our garage. So that gives you a little bit of where we're at, to where our warehouse space is now. As Angela can attest to, we seem to bust out of the seams from our warehouse to where we need to get to. And that is exciting truckloads can be exciting and challenging as well. So logistics with purpose is definitely something that's always on our forefront of our mind.
Awesome. So 10, 10, 10. I love that. So a little birdie told me that you've got a great story in terms of how you met your husband, Manny.
Oh my
Anything you
gosh.
can share there?
Well, since I'm way past, that age range to be able to remember everything, I get to tell my version of it, whether it's full truth or not. You don't have the other side of the story, so you'll have to take me at what it is. But as I mentioned, my husband was originally from Nigeria. So if you guys remember back in the day, Hakeem Olajuwon was a big basketball player for
Yeah.
Houston. My husband had some of the same coaching staff. So in that time, we didn't have Zoom and Teams and all this great way to market. So my husband sent in 5 opportunities via coaches for playing basketball here in the US. The offers were 5 scholarship offers from University of, I'm not going to tell you where I'm from yet, to the University of Oklahoma Christian, et cetera, et cetera. These great offers. So all 5 of them came in. His visa did not. So not until his visa got approved did he end up picking. He said, "I'll pick the brochure with the best looking marketing materials in front of it." And he ended up picking the University of North Dakota at Lake Region, and that's where we met. I'm originally from the Midwest, about an hour and a half from Winnipeg, so that tells you how far north I lived and
Wow.
grew up. I will say, I wish I had some of your guys' accents because they're much better than the little bit that I still have left. But basically, when he came to the US and to the school, it was in my hometown of about 3,000 people. And so he was a year ahead of me. We had a lot of the same friends, a lot of the same sporting activities. And so we met in college. We had an event called Snow Days where you had a king and a queen. He was the king the previous year. We had started dating in that year, and they come back and crown the queen. I was the queen for student senate and student government, as Emmanuel was the king. So the time we were dating, he came back and crowned his queen. And since then, guess what? That's what I've been. So that's my story, and I'm
Great
sticking
story.
to it.
I love
Well,
it.
Angela
so
can't say anything else. So there we go.
Enrique and
Well, it's-
Adrian, y'all didn't
yeah.
tell us that we're in the midst of royalty. So shame on y'all.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know.
It's
And
a great
second-
story.
It really is a great story. And then, of course, secondly, Hakeem Olajuwon, Hall of Fame, NBA Hall of Famer. I mean, he
Yeah.
was
What a player.
huge on the scene. That's right. And
Yes.
the Rockets won. I want to say they won back-to-back titles, if my memory
Yeah.
serves me right, back in the 90s. So I love that.
Wasn't basketball great then? Man, I
Yes.
loved basketball.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, we're hoping the Hawks, the Atlanta Hawks, are trying hard to get back.
Well,
But Tracie, thanks
same
so
with the
much.
Charlotte Hornets. We can only dream.
Hey, remember back to good old days, Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson, right?
Yep.
Who's the father? Let's see here. Del Curry was a
Yes.
three-pointer specialist for Hornets back in the day. Of course, his
Yep.
son is lighting up the scene out in Golden State. So that's when I knew basketball the best back in the 90s, to your point, Tracie. So we'll see.
Yes.
Golden age may come back, but thanks so much for walking
That
us
was
through
pretty
your
good,
background.
Scott.
Hey, it's all I got. It's all I got. All right. So Angela, same question to you. Tell us a little about yourself and same thing, your journey kind of to where you are here now.
Okay. Just wanted to do an add-on to Tracie's story. One of my favorite parts of she and Manny's story is, when Manny, talks about his whole trajectory and coming to America. He talks about it's one of, God's, funny jokes in his life is taking a boy from Nigeria and putting him in North Dakota.
Yep.
But Tracie and I, our personal lives, very similar. I have 4 children as well, 18 to 28. Have been newly married for a year and have gone back and forth between the corporate and the nonprofit arena and landed at Samaritan's feet 2 years ago. And it's been a fantastic experience. It's just it's a really, really great company, great mission.
Well, yeah, I mean, and ambitious. I love the Tracie. I think you said the BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals. I think that stems from what was the popular business book series? Built to
Stephen
Last.
Covey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I guess,
Stephen
yeah.
Covey too. Yeah.
I guess so. I love that, and clearly you are making some headway on your big goals to serve a ton of people across the world. And so, Angela, when did you and Tracie meet? You've been with the organization now 2 years. Where did y'all meet?
Well, we met during my interview.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history. It's funny, the God connections, and sometimes you forget those connection points as they're woven together. But unique thing with Angela is one of our colleagues and obviously mutual friends has just said, "Hey, there's an opportunity for this lady. Do you want to interview her?" And the rest is history. And she's here to stay with us. We like to say within our SF family and volunteers. Once you drink the Kool-Aid a little bit, you kind of become, we're not the mafia, but it's hard to get out once you're in, and not because we don't let you, because you don't want to. So
that's awesome.
That speaks a little bit to just the nature of the team that we have and the love that they show to everybody that comes in contact.
Awesome.
Tracie, talking about connections quickly, I first learned about Samaritan's Feet through my son-in-law, Brian Davis. From Truist. He forwarded the gala event to me last year, and I enjoyed watching that on the Saturday night. It was wonderful. So that was my introduction to you.
Oh my gosh, you just made my heart so much happier, and I love you even more because we love Brian.
Yeah, he's wonderful. We love him. He's the most incredible husband to our daughter and son-in-law. Yeah.
Awesome. And I love your daughter. So that just makes me even, that's we can be done now. That was great. That's all I needed.
Well, blessed be the ties that bind. The world's a much smaller place once you start peeling the layers back. One final question I want to turn over to Enrique. It sounds like Tracie, given Angela's background, especially corporate and other nonprofits, y'all gotten quite a great get for the team there at SF, as you put it, Samaritan's Feet.
Yes, definitely. And I think, Scott, it talks a little bit about our leadership team in general, not just myself and my husband, but we are huge proponents of making sure we have smart, if not smarter, people around us. And we certainly do. And we have people that have the heart, which you can't teach, and have the expertise to be able to help us carry forward the vision. We started out with that big BHAG, but we really see ourselves as becoming the entity that can help count to zero. So we want zero shoeless children in the world. And how do you collaborate and partner with other organizations, with like-minded citizens that can help you accomplish it, so that someday we will see that there is a world with zero shoeless children. And not just children, but individuals. But obviously children resonates with all of us, especially women, when we are centered on how do we affect our community for the change that we need to see and the difference that we want made.
Well said. Very well said. All right. So Enrique, where are we going next?
Yes. No, Angela, I wanted to start with you because you mentioned that you've had like corporate experience and you went to the non-for-profit and corporate experience back again. So a couple of times. So tell us a little bit more about your professional life, and then also a little bit about what kind of maybe a moment in your life that made you make that decision and shift from a corporate environment to a non-for-profit environment, which I'm sure it's very different at many different multiple levels.
Yes, definitely. So my I kind of gone back and forth between the nonprofit and the for-profit arena, and actually was not really was not in the process of looking for a job when I got approached by the mutual friend about Samaritan's Feet. There was a longing, within me to get back into the nonprofit arena, but wasn't really sure, whom I wanted to align myself with. God definitely had a plan, and it's been really great the last 2 years. But I've worked in the healthcare space. I've worked in banking. I've kind of been all over the board. I've worked with churches, and so it's just having the ability to serve in your everyday work life is just it's tantamount to nothing else for me.
It sounds like you have a big passion for giving back and helping people. Where does that come from? Can you kind of trace it back to maybe a moment or a couple of stories from your past that kind of made you the person you are now?
I mean, I would say for me, I was raised by, parents who were very giving, of themselves to the people around them, to their community, first and foremost. And just having a very full, very enriched, church life has kind of fed into that as well. But just really deep connections with people in general. There's so much need out there, and there's just so much need for just general kindness. And so I feel that, most of my desires, are fueled from just a very strong inclination to really connect with people on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And you probably have seen like this need throughout your career, because you've been actually moving from different industries and different positions. And so that's definitely something that resonates with me, and I think with everyone here on this call. Let me just shift gears to Tracie now. And Tracie, what could you tell us a little more about why did you start this? Why shoes? Why Samaritan's Feet? With your story and your personal background, and what you just told us a little about the way you met your husband. Why did you start this, and what was the moment for you that made it all
Oh
click?
my gosh. Yeah, listen, I'm gonna give you the condensed version because we could
have
be on
time.
the phone. We could be on the phone for the weekend if you want to hear the full story, but I have to give the Reader's Digest version. So I want it to be, applicable to the time and keep people's attention. But for myself personally, I think one of the things that I've from when I was young and growing up in a smaller community, you quickly know the haves from the have-nots, right? And you feel that. I grew up in that environment a little bit, grew up with, my mom, even though doing her best, still had to take on a lot of the responsibility for our upbringing. And because of that, some of the have not that happens when you're in that predicament. But I will say this, one of those moments for me was when I was a senior in high school, and we had to write a paper, kind of like an exit paper that you do. And so one of the things that we had to write was, what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, 18-year-old, you have no clue. At least I didn't. And so I just remember writing a really good paper. At least I know I got a good grade on it. I still have that paper actually, because it's probably one of the best grades that I got for my senior year, as you have those great senior year moments. But the thing that was asked was, what do you want to be when you grow up, and how do you plan to do that? And I just remember telling and writing in the paper, I want to help people and I want to own my own business. Now, how I got to that, I had no clue. And I would lie if I told you that when Emmanuel and I got married, we had this great plan of how we were going to start this organization, and wham. I worked in hospitality and tourism a lot. I booked corporate travel for years before we started Samaritan's Feet. So we were that kind of conglomerate for a lot of companies, from Weyerhaeuser to Computer Science Corporation to government entities. So I booked a lot of corporate accounts and loved it. Loved it. We moved to Charlotte and continued doing that as we raised our children. And then I was called to homeschool. So we can talk about that another time, and those fun benefits of logistically trying to homeschool 4 kids in lots of different ages.
I can imagine.
As logistics applies to every part of our life, doesn't it? But I will say, my husband coming from Nigeria when my children were young, our 2 oldest, his father got really sick and he had to go back to Africa. First time he had been back in 10 years, and his father was dying and was dying from cirrhosis of the liver. And so that was the first time he had been back in his country, feet on the ground as an adult. And his eyes were open, and he was shocked. And he talks about the fact that he couldn't even use the bathroom when he got there, because they grew up in a small 2-bedroom house, 15 people, the more the merrier, but not enough space for that many people, and certainly not enough income. And when he got to the park that he grew up in, that was outside of his home, called Rowe Park, where he grew up playing basketball and grew up playing sports. He also grew up selling spirits and minerals and beverages, because part of his job at the age of 9 was to provide water, soft drinks to the athletes that were around that park. And when he was home, all he could see was the fact that, gosh, did I grow up like this? did I grow up? Because, when you're surrounded by in a forest and every tree looks the same, you
Right.
don't realize that there was great need, but God still provided for his family. So when he was home, he really, I would say it was the catalyst for the start. We had done a lot of things within our local church, and Angela mentioned that in her brief personal life. That's very important to us. We had ministered and done Saturday morning church for kids, feeding the homeless programs, things that were still kept us comfortable in our day-to-day life, but not until my husband went home and went back to that image of being that 9-year-old selling drinks and soft drinks to people in that park, and remembering that when he was 9 years old, there was missionaries that came to Africa, and they were playing games like Vacation Bible School, when you go and you pass out different things to kids in those areas, and just want to love on and bless people. And so the missionary there was from a Midwest town in Wisconsin, and was playing a game. And the game, Emmanuel didn't know what it was. All they've seen was soccer balls. He's bouncing around this big orange ball, and he's like, "Ooh, this looks interesting. You don't have to kick this thing. It's a basketball." And so just was playing games in that park, keeping the kids entertained, showing them that they were seen and loved. And so out of that, they did a shooting competition. And here's where the story gets a little bit, I don't know, I wasn't there, but so they included Emmanuel in this as he was selling, minerals and sodas. They asked him if he wanted to play. And so he came along. A lot of the kids pushed him aside because, again, he was just a street vendor selling soft drinks to help his mom. But he got to get in line and play this game. And the guy, Dave, that was from Wisconsin, said, "Hey, whoever makes the first shot gets a prize." So Emmanuel likes to say his first shot was nothing but net and blah, blah, blah. May have been, might not have been. I get to tell
I'm
the
sure
story,
it was.
So yeah. But because of that, the prize, and Dave pulled Emmanuel aside, and I'm shortening this so much because it's such a great story to tell, but I'm going to condense as much as possible. But what had happened that day was Dave pulled Emmanuel aside and said, "Hey, wait, we have a prize for you." The prize was a pair of shoes.
Wow.
Okay. And so look at Emmanuel at 9-year-old, and then he goes back 10 years later. So we're in our early 20s. And that imagery is coming back to his mind of, hey, I remember this was a eureka moment for him. Right. And so what does that look like? And so, David told them, listen, no matter your circumstances, your environment, God has a plan for you. And Manuel was so excited about those pair of shoes. First kid in that area, first kid in his little village and community to receive a pair of shoes, let alone a pair of tennis shoes. So if you guys have ever been on a mission trip, and if you haven't, here's the plug to come with us when everything opens back up, of course. He did not want to wear those pair of shoes because it's like having a Mercedes Benz in that area, right? And having that opportunity to have a pair of shoes in his community was invaluable. Running home to his mom to show the shoes and just say, "Mom, look what I've gotten." And a lot of the kids, when you go on those mission trips, still do that same thing. They put those new shoes over their neck, back in their hope tote that we give them, because they don't want to mess them up. For a lot of them, that's their first good pair of shoes to get them back and forth. And as you know, or don't know, shoes in the U.S. is still on the top 10 gifts that kids need for back to school. So it's crazy to think in the U.S. it's replenishing and making sure kids have shoes for the school year that fit them properly. Overseas, it's still that, but it's amplified because that's a lot of people's main mode of transportation, and that was for Emmanuel. And so, long story, hopefully even shorter, when his father passed away, it was an eye-opener, and he came back. He has his degree in logistics and supply chain and economics and agriculture. Thought that
is that what he was doing at the time when his dad passed away?
He worked for a startup IT company here in Charlotte, North Carolina. But his ultimate goal someday was to be able to provide food for people all over the world. And when we were in college, actually worked for a Pioneer seed company, planting corn and other things of that nature. But again, it was, I think, and Angela has talked about it too, I think you either seen that modeled, that kindness and that generosity, whether that be through your family or through your church or through friends, or that's so innate in you because you've come from that environment where if you would have had that person advocate for you, or that person want to help you, or that mentor. And so for Emmanuel, it was always ingrained, just like for myself, that I know what it meant when I had a big sister help me. Emmanuel knew what it meant when Dave gave him that pair of shoes. So paying that forward with what you've been encouraged in and been blessed in, to be a blessing back. And so that's always been his eureka moment in the back of his head, was probably when he went back, when his father passed away. And then coming back here, working, he had just gotten a job and moved us to Charlotte, actually, our first big boy and big girl job out of college. Mine was still in the Midwest, but my company was also here in Charlotte. For Emmanuel, it was one of his mentors, and still is, that he took his first job out of college. And he was actually at used to be, what did the logistics conference used to be called? CMS or CS? I can't remember the term, if you guys have been to some of those logistics software conferences, but he met his potential boss at that conference in San Diego. That connection brought us to Charlotte. And just from there, worked in software, went back when he came back from Nigeria, still worked for that same software company. And it took us about 5 years before God said, "You're comfortable. You've been doing the same thing. You've been working corporate America, coming from Africa, in any place, I think, and even people in the US, once you feel like you've accomplished your dream and your vision, you want to keep making that American dream happen." And so to be called out into full-time ministry, not knowing who's going to sign your paycheck, it took us a few years to get brave enough to do it and to jump out and not just keep our big foot tapped in the water, but to really make more of a ripple effect in the lives of people.
That's incredibly impressive and very inspirational, and it's a great story too. And so when he came back, did you immediately started collecting some shoes? And you mentioned earlier today that you had you started in your garage, like some of these huge IT companies, they all start in their garage, it sounds like. So tell us a little bit more about the garage, and how, because you told the story, and it's very uplifting and inspirational, and it's also incredibly exciting. I mean, I kind of feel like someone should listen to you and maybe write a book or make a movie out of this, because it sounds like a really great, exciting story. But at what point did you say, okay, well, tell me a little bit more about the transition, right? When was it that you said, let's do this? Shoes,
when my husband,
Africa.
Right. Gosh, like I said before, we both knew and both had those eureka moments in our life that we were called to something bigger. I think we all know that. I think we all are, if we're true to ourselves, know that we are born into this world to accomplish a purpose. And that's unique to each one of us individually. And so finding that is the sweet spot of living a life, right, that's full and abundant. And so once Emmanuel got back from Nigeria, we just really went back to life as normal. It wasn't until, probably beginning of, latter part of 2001, 2002, and we started in 2003, where we really started to say, what is it going to take? And so we got away. We are ones that like to plan and set our strategy and our themes for the year. So we went away to Charleston. I remember this. He had been talking to his boss at this time. And again, I said it was a young IT company. So they had some venture capitalists that want a little bit more gray hair in their business suites. And so Emmanuel and his boss are still very good friends. And Emmanuel started sharing a little bit more about this idea that we had. We didn't even have a name at the point, and we went back and forth on a lot of different names. And so they just continued to share. Emmanuel shared a little bit more of our vision, And so there was an opportunity where Jay, his boss at the time, said, "Hey, let's get away to a game and just talk." And he asked Emmanuel a question that kind of started some of this, and said, "Hey, if you could do anything, what would you do? You talk a lot about this organization you're thinking about starting. What would it take to start it?" And Emmanuel was a little bit, taken back, because when your boss starts asking you questions about what else you want to do,
why are you asking me this? Right? Am I in trouble?
Right. You kind of start reading between the lines of like, wonder what they're getting at there. And so that was just a brief little, like, want to kind of get a gate check of where you're at. Emmanuel came home and shared that. I said, let's just get away and pray. So we went to Charleston for a weekend, prayed. That was a Friday. We talked about, hey, what is it going to take? We had savings. We tried to
Nice.
plan well and plan our life a little bit so that we actually can, not live without having some preparedness and preparation, as we all try for. Our children were still little, so had about a year's worth of savings. And Emmanuel said, you know what, if I could get like another 6 months, if I could get a severance of 6 months, we could probably make this stretch for a couple of years if we pared down everything that wasn't essential. Came back Sunday. Emmanuel went to work on Monday. You remember that conversation you had with Jay? Jay's in his office. Emmanuel's getting ready to go to lunch and walks by his office and said, hey, man, come in and let's chat for a minute, and shut the door. Okay, well, now you've had this conversation offsite. Now your boss is telling you to shut the door. This is not feeling good. This is not feeling good at all. And so at the time, I had only been working part-time, still booking corporate travel, but knew that with 2 children and a third on the way, our son was born in 2002. We started the ministry in 2003. And so this wasn't the opportune time to step out in faith and not have a paycheck and live on your savings. It just wasn't. Well, by lunchtime on Monday, Emmanuel called me and said, hey, I think I just got fired. Jay basically called them in and said, you know what, that dream you've been talking about, what if I can help you? Somebody else, the VCs that are coming in, want to bring in their own team, and you're one of the positions that we don't need 2 of. You can go into this department because we still love what you do, or and Emmanuel had obviously worked his way up the totem pole, so wasn't really wanting to take a lateral or a step down, and just said at that time, I guess this is what God's doing, is pushing me out. A couple of years before that, even before we went and prayed, I had went to a Joyce Meyers conference, and one of the things that she had said was just giving me some unique words. This lady that was at the conference with me and saying, I see truckloads of shoes being delivered. This was before we hadn't shared our vision or our dream with anybody. And this was before Emmanuel's boss said, you're finished. She had pulled, and this was another eureka moment. I gave you a little bit of Emmanuel's. Mine was also was going to the Joyce Meyers conference, a friend of a friend, kind of like how I got to meet Angela. And so thankful for those friend connections, but had pulled me aside out of the car and said, I know that you've been called to some other things that God's putting on your heart and your husband's. You've been putting them in a box. You should not be in the backseat anymore. I see a convoy of trucks taking shoes. Your family has all been called to do this, because I had put the request out to our Lord that if we were going to go into and do something in a ministry and that was going to service other individuals around the world, I needed to make sure that my family was still able to serve and be a part. I'm not going to gain the world and lose my family to what God's called us to. And I knew God promised us that. And so one of the unique things, and I still have this bottle of water, is she said, hey, do you mind if I wash your feet? So she washed my feet with the Deer Park bottle of water. And up until when COVID happened, that's one of the things that we do when we distribute shoes to people all over the world, is we wash their feet, because we want them to know there's a transaction and there's an interaction that happens. And there's we see you, we love you, we value you. And as Angela shared, showing forth that love and generosity and kindness in a world that can be very much the opposite and can be very callous and hurried, and not allowed to be interrupted. So we have those interactions with people intentionally so that they know, I know your name. I don't want to know a face of billions of children. I want to know names of people.
It's a powerful message that you're sending, right? And I'm guessing that's just something that everyone clearly is seeing it and experiencing it. And I think you guys have done an amazing job kind of leading the way in terms of helping others. And I'm sure that at least your children must be incredibly proud of what you guys have done. And it's such an amazing thing to have growing up as well, right? I mean, the example you said for your children, that's probably something, a very unique way of changing the world too. So it's amazing.
Definitely.
Thank you for sharing all those.
You're welcome. Stories. And sorry if I got long-winded. You can always do a stop it.
No, we'll schedule a couple of new interviews with you. As I just have a quick question. So you said 10 was the initial goal when you started, right? 10 million, 10 shoes, 10 years. Where are we now from a numerical standpoint? How many shoes?
Oh my gosh.
12, 13 years after you started.
Angela's my numbers gal, and she knows that off the top of my head way better than I do.
We are just under 8 million served.
So we have to make a collective push to get this 10-10-10 out of the way.
Yeah.
And honestly, I
Yes.
think we all get a buy in 2020. I think we can all count that as not a full year for purposes of your goal. And let's make sure that we actually help you push to the 10 million mark. But that's thank you again, both of you. It's great.
You're welcome. No, and I think it's definitely something that, as we've said before, how do we push to get everybody? And the awareness of all of us being a global-minded citizen helps to accomplish that goal.
Yep. So before Adrian asks about one aspect of your mission, Angela, I want to bring you back into it because it's neat to kind of hear Tracie walk us through those journeys. But you see it, day in and day out, right? The cultural element we'll touch on shortly, the mission, the service, and of course the business that just has to happen. Anything, in terms of what you saw early on and how it really met that need, which you spoke to of needing to serve others. Any element of Tracie's story that really resonates the most with you?
I mean, there's so many pieces of it, and for me, one of my eureka moments was my very first week with Samaritan's Feet. We had a local shoe distribution going on at Movement School over off of Freedom Drive. And, I remember being at that shoe distribution and, at first, working the shoe closet, without, going with, the volunteers would come and pick up the shoes after they found out the size. They'd go and take it to the kids. And so worked, doing that for a little while. And then, had the privilege of, interacting with some of the kids. I was, sitting in a circle with them while they were waiting to be called, and then got to actually go and be present for, some of the foot washing and them getting their new shoes. And there was a little girl, she was 8 years old. And of course I'm gonna get choked up telling you the story. But it was her very first pair of new shoes, and just seeing that pure joy, just in being singled out and being loved on and prayed for, in that moment, and having, that connection. And, of course, again, it was, a weekend, and, you're drinking from the fire hose, and, it's trying to learn all things. And in that moment, it was like, this is totally where I'm supposed to be, and was so completely hooked from that moment on. And I've been to a couple of shoe distributions, since. I mean, obviously being in the day-to-day business, there's not a lot of extra time to be on the front lines. But I went to Northern Kentucky with one of our distribution reps, and did a couple of distributions with her. And we had partnered with some of the Walmart employees. And there were some of the Walmart employees who, they had driven down from Michigan just to participate in this particular shoe distribution, because it was a set event that they wanted to do. And so I was talking with several of the people right before we were going to be doing the event, and some of the people, this was like their 4th or 5th year doing it. Hence why they would drive 4 hours and, just to participate. And so we were talking, they're like, they said every time that, that we come here, it is so hard to, not just, lose yourself in that moment and just get so overly emotional about, the needs and the fact that you are touching, these kids' lives. And I told them, I said, becoming a mom, obviously your skill at being overly emotional and crying at the drop of a hat goes way up. But I told them that, taking on this job and working with this organization, crying is definitely a resume worthy skill of mine at this point.
Well, I imagine, well, not imagine, I know all eureka moments are not equal, right? You have some small ones, you got big ones, but I can only imagine, I bet it was an epiphany and kind of a life altering moment, not to be dramatic, but be accurate, to see these kids, excited to have what they really need and then get it in the moment. And it's probably a mixture of emotions, but I can only imagine how powerful of a moment that was, Angela.
Yeah, and and just to the those reminders, I mean that was a distribution that we did that was 5 minutes away from our office.
Hmm.
And we have a huge international focus, but we have an equally large focus here in the United States, and it's just those constant reminders that there is such an unbelievable level of need right here in Charlotte, in all states. That's one of the really cool things that we've been able to do. And this is another eureka moment, in the face of COVID and everything that's gone on, and all of the restrictions around having public events, and being in contact, even being around people. And so we've been able to pivot, and just the eureka moment for me is our team members, and how they have absolutely they've banded together, they've kept their spirits up, they've kept each other's spirits up. They've been innovative, creative. They've just done so many things to help us change our model. We have now added in a whole domestic missions platform to our whole our missions department. And so we've done several domestic distributions where a team will go for a couple of days in the in country, and go to a different state and serve communities in need. We've done a lot of drive-through shoe distributions, since we can't do the full-on contact with the feet washing. And we've instituted something called Hope Totes, where the kids don't just get shoes now. They get their shoes, their socks, they get a string backpack, they get personal notes. They're called Hope Notes, that we've had corporate partners partner with us to get their employees engaged in writing those notes. There's notes that are specific to veterans, to homeless people, to children. We've done just a whole lot. And I guess it's just referencing that recognizing the strength of your staff is another eureka moment for me.
Love that. All right, so Adrian, where are we going next?
Angela, I know when we spoke initially last year, when we had our first call, it became very clear to me that your missions to Cuba were very near and dear to your heart. And could you just share why that is, and the story of how you went down there and the impact that those missions had on you?
Yeah, well, actually, I have not been on an international trip with Samaritan's Feet yet. I was actually supposed to go on two in 2020, and again, not to beat a dead horse, but we all kind of had that small little pandemic going on. But one of my favorite videos that we show to our volunteers that come to the warehouse, and we've shown it a lot. In the video, there's a narrative in there from one of our huge supporters. She and her husband are just, they've been pivotal in our organization. But she usually is our team leader for Cuba. And I have watched that video that we show the volunteers, I don't know, probably 70 times now, and it still chokes me up every single time.
It's very powerful.
Yeah, just so many great stories. But yeah, Cuba and Africa are both really high on my list personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Just talking about your outreach, could you share with us where you currently ship to at the moment, what regions of the world, and also what type of logistics challenges that you have right now?
Yeah, so we ship to Africa. We ship to Belize, Bahamas, Dominican Republic. Ghana is one of the countries in Africa. Uganda. Help me out, Tracie. Where else? I'm talking.
Philippines, Honduras,
Yeah.
Nicaragua. Trying to go off of my list that we just went through the other day, but let's just say it's probably best to say some continents that we don't ship. Let's just go with, we haven't went to Antarctica, so that's one that we probably won't ship to at any time soon. But our international, and Angela alluded to it. We have a huge presence in a lot of the partnerships that we do international. And with that, not just our partnerships with, the likes of other organizations here in the US that also go overseas, but our partners that are on the ground there, whether that be in Honduras or Nicaragua with some of the missionary work that are there, some other NGOs that are there, that help us receive the containers and help with some of the, logistical nightmares, as you guys all know, that can happen with, especially even escalated in this world of COVID right now, getting things properly to where they need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I'm enjoying working with Angela at the moment on a shipment to Ghana, and trying to work with our agent there to get a waiver of duty exemption for you, because the duty component of that one container is about 65% of the total door-to-door cost, which is huge. So that's happening right now, and so we believe very, very strongly in that. Of obviously issues come up and problems come up and challenges and roadblocks and international logistics, but we believe in working through those and trying to find a solution around them, rather than just admitting, sorry, that's just the cost and that's what it is. So
Yeah,
exactly. And we appreciate that, because there's so many aspects, from clearing agents to getting things even in Africa, and Angela mentioned a couple of different countries in Africa, and then just the internal aspect of from country to country, or point A to point B in Africa. And there might be some logistical equipment and just lack of resources in some of those small, getting it from ocean to truck to the people, can be, challenges that are not for the faint of heart, let's say it that way, and requires a little bit of ingenuity that might not look like what you always think. We're not one. I'll say this: one of our staff that has since retired, we have taken shoes into Cuba, our first trip into Cuba, on a sailboat out of Catamaran, because that's how we could get them in the most effectively and the cheapest. We have also seen our shoes on the backs of donkeys. So we're not opposed to some of those options. It's just, whatever we can streamline most effective, we're going to use, darn it.
Right.
Spoken like a true logistician. Hey, whatever it takes,
Whatever.
right? Yeah. So Enrique, I know we're going to talk culture here in just a second. I want to point something out, because I think with the vaccine, that we've all referenced the pandemic numerous times, and of course we've got that noble mission taking place of the vaccine distribution. But as consumers and as non-supply chain practitioners are learning, which is a silver lining, right? All of this, part of the silver lining of these challenging times, is that nothing works just as it's planned. I mean, just here recently, it'll probably be a couple weeks in the backdrop as this podcast publishes, in the European AstraZeneca, they're expecting perhaps as much as a 60% drop in less of the vaccine shipments, and it's all because of the yield projected versus actual is 2/3 off. And those unfortunately, despite all of our advances as an industry, manufacturing and elsewhere, those things happen, and nothing. And so Tracie, I think pointing out the catamaran and the donkeys and just or whatever it takes to get the product to the people that either ordered it or need it. I mean, that's the art and the craft of global supply chain that I admire so much. And I love how y'all have embraced that to make it happen and to serve the folks that you serve. So that's a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
All right. So Enrique, moving from there to, and now we can let your moniker out of the bag, I think. Can I have your permission? I don't want to.
Oh, please go for it. It's time.
So Adrian, what did we identify early on in the pre-show about Enrique?
That he is Mr. Culture Nerd, and that is going to be his hashtag. He lives and breathes it. That's the type of culture is that we have at Vector Global comes from him, and it's filtered throughout the company. So I'll let him elaborate on that more, but it's something that we believe so strongly in.
Awesome. Mr. Cultural Nerd, you have the baton, sir.
Well, thank you very much. No, I love I love my team, basically. That's just what everything else boils down to. And I think, Angela, you mentioned it too, right? That was one of the main things that you said, and I can totally agree with you. And so that's what it is for me. It's just we have such a strong team at Vector that share our values, that all want to go and help people and make a world a better place. And we're all leveraging logistics to do so, which is very exciting because there's so many opportunities out there, and everything needs transportation. So no, for me, it's all about the people. It's all about our team, and I agree with Angela. And Angela mentioned it before I did. It's really kudos to my team and the people that I work with. And I'm so happy and proud that they let me be part of the team. So, with that said, let's go back to our guests of honor. Angela, you mentioned the team. You mentioned being creative and innovative, and you like your team. It sounds like you're very excited with the team that you guys have, and that's basically just a reflection of the great culture that you probably have as well. So, if you had to kind of give advice to people that are listening to us, like the top three things that you think make like a good corporate or organizational culture for you, what would those three things be? And Tracie, I'll ask you a similar question afterwards, so you have a little bit of time to to noodle on it. But what would those three things be that make you guys great and could make other organizations great?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's approaching, everything that we do with the servant leader mentality. Um, we've talked about that, that we want to portray that to the world, and we want to portray that to the recipients of the shoes, but it starts with how we treat each other. It's it's really, it is making your fellow employees feel that they are heard. It's helping them to feel appreciated. And just, constantly encouraging, that free thought and encouraging that collaboration for them to be able to be creative and come up with, those great ideas that are going to, make move the needle for the organization. So that would probably be the three things. And you might be the culture nerd, but Tracie and I are the culture queens.
Yes, you are. And with that, let's move on to the other queen, Tracie. When it comes to culture, you started the business with the organization, with your husband and your family and friends, and it has grown to so much more than just that initial thought that you had. Why? What are you doing right? What are you guys doing right? And what can you share with others that are listening to you with similar passions and ideas, but haven't been able to probably grow it as much as you guys have?
That's such a good question. And I think it starts with reminding yourself that, you got to remember that you don't do everything wrong, because it's easy to look at internally and from that leadership perspective, where you need to get to versus how far you've come sometimes. So what Angela mentioned with servant leadership, I think certainly leadership, it starts and stops with leadership, as we all know on this call. I think for our team, you mentioned it, it's that family, good and bad. We are team members, but we also deeply care for each other. And Angela mentioned that it starts with our team. We try and strive to do a really good job of letting people know that we care about where you're at, because as you know, professional and personal life balance is a fallacy to some degree, right? You're carrying yourself home from work, and you're carrying yourself from home into work. And so helping to understand that it's that care and concern isn't just from a professional perspective. We deeply care about our team and when they hurt and how that hurts us and affects us. And I hope that to Angela's point that we just said, that we try really hard to make sure people feel that from the inside out first. Because if you don't take care of yourself first, you're not good for anybody, right? And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to plug my phone in a minute. I think the other piece too is something that we've taken on, is that's love, serve, and care, and that starts at home. And so that family feel, if anything that we've tried to carry through is those things. We need to model that first. We don't save our leftovers for everybody else. We give our best to our team, and out of that, they then have what they need to give their best out.
Excellent. No, that's
wonderful.
Incredible message to everyone that's listening to this podcast or watching us on the different channels. This is really powerful and very practical information too, to how to create a good, reliable, and outstanding culture like the one that you guys have. And thanks again to the culture queens, Angela and Tracie. Hashtag the
Thank
culture
you.
queens.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love that. But,
that's gonna be your nicknames from now on.
Absolutely. I'm going to
Thank you.
remember that.
So Tracie and Angela, we're going to wrap up here in a minute. Tracie, if you need to plug your phone in, go right ahead. We'll
Awesome.
want
Thank
to make
you.
sure you're covered. While we do though, that love, serve, care. I mean, there's so many quotable quotes, and Enrique and
Yeah.
Adrian, you know, I've got 17 pages of notes on my end. There's so much that Angela and Tracie have already shared that really, you know, whether you're a nonprofit leader, you know, looking for best practices and benchmarking and inspiration, or if you're on the corporate side or entrepreneur, there's so much here in this conversation, I think, that you can take, act on, and will inspire you. This cultural component we just wrapped up this segment on culture, servant leadership. Angela, it's on one hand, it's become like a cliche, but clearly, as Angela has pointed out, and as evident in their culture, it is very real, and it's acted upon and executed, you know, hour in or day in and day out, and it's not lip service, you know. So anyway, I want to make sure I want to make sure I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know if y'all are. Hopefully, y'all can hear me okay. Thumbs up. All right, great. Let's make sure our listeners know exactly how to, you know, jump into the fight and not only connect with the Samaritan's Feet team, but support and be part of this incredible noble mission. So y'all might have some of the same answers and some of the separate answers about someone asked both of you, but how can folks connect? Let's start with Angela. Angela, how can folks connect with you and, of course, learn more about Samaritan's Feet?
Well, our website tells an incredible story. There's lots of videos and video information about, you know, who we are, how we got started, all the different platforms that we have available. There's, you know, information on our missions, you know, trips, domestic and international. You know, there's shoe drive opportunities, there's different fundraising things, there's volunteering with us, there's volunteering at distribution, there's virtual volunteering, there's just the whole host of information on the website, which is SamaritansFeet.org.
SamaritansFeet.org. SamaritansFeet.org. Outstanding. And Tracie, same question to you. Anything else you'd like to add to how folks can plug in, maybe your greatest need, you know, right now that we can maybe challenge our community with? What else would you add, Tracie?
Yeah, I think our greatest need is just resources. And you know, I don't think any nonprofit would say different right now. It's the resources and the partnerships and the collaboration with which to, as we've mentioned on the logistics front, of just getting things to to the people we need to serve. Whatever collaboration, whatever partnership, we are so encouraged and look for that to be that like-minded opportunity to help advance what we're doing as well as partners. And so we look forward with anticipation to those continued efforts.
Outstanding. What a wonderful way to close out. You know, we're recording this on a Friday afternoon. We'll be publishing this in, you know, a couple weeks here. But what a great way to you know, cap off a very a challenging but successful week. Because if this doesn't, Enrique and Adrian, if this doesn't get you ready to run through some brick walls, you better check your pulse, right?
Absolutely.
So now so Adrian and Enrique, I want to, in a moment, I want to pick your favorite aspect of this conversation. And we're going to talk about Angela and Tracie as if they're not right here on the line with us. So but first, let's thank them for their time. Tracie Ohonme, Executive Vice President and co-founder with Samaritan's Feet, and her colleague Angela Carlson, Executive Director of Finance and General Manager, also with Samaritan's Feet, SamaritansFeet.org. Y'all jump in the fray. Thanks, Angela, Tracie. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you. We
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed it.
We'll be reconnecting soon. We'll see how the year treats the great team there. All right. So don't go anywhere, though. Enrique and Adrian, I want to put both of y'all on the spot. One thing, Reader's Digest version of your favorite thing you heard from Angela and Tracie here today. And Enrique, let's start with you. I'm going to put you on the spot first.
You always start with me. I thought you were going to go with Adrian this time. There's so many, there's just so many things. And I didn't write 17 pages, but I wrote a lot of pages of notes. And again, it's been fun, and it's been exciting, and it's been inspirational to hear both Angela and Tracie. And I was talking about all this so I could think about the one thing in the background, which is zero shoeless kids in the world. And I think Tracie mentioned that at some point at the beginning of the conversation. That's it. That's it. Zero shoeless kids in the world. That's a goal that we should all try to reach. I think it's realistic. Why not? It's we're all in this together, and we should all push really hard to accomplish that. So I'll stay with that. Zero shoeless kids in the world.
Love that, Enrique. Adrian.
I think I just loved hearing the personal stories, Tracie's personal story, and how she met Manny, and taking that leap of faith to really get out of their comfort zone and make things happen and make a difference was really inspiring. And Angela, forgive me, but I'm going to mention it. The fact that while you were talking about the story about the young girl with the first pair of shoes, and your voice broke, and that made a huge impact for me. The business side of it is one thing, and that's hugely important. But I think the spirit and the passion and the dedication that is still so evident in both of you is just inspiring, and it's wonderful to see. And it really made a huge impact on me today. So thank you for sharing.
Well put, Adrian. I love that. And I'll add love, serve, care. Love that. And second, I think it was Angela up front, way back front part of the conversation, mentioned a general need for more kindness. And hey, I absolutely agree. We've got to find a way to create and build more bridges in these fractious times. So I really appreciate what y'all are doing in that regard, abroad and right here under our nose, folks that need the basics and bare essentials right around the corner from us. So thanks so much again to Angela and Tracie with Samaritan's Feet. Big thanks to Adrian, Enrique, and of course the Vector Global team for their partnership on Logistics with Purpose. I love how Tracie and Angela both spoke to that here today. Tons of purpose. To our audience members in our community, hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. I tell you, it'd be easy to book in a couple of additional hours and dive even deeper on this intriguing story. But hey, make sure you go check out SamaritansFeet.org. If you like conversations like this, be sure to check us out at SupplyChainNow.com. Of course, you can find us wherever you get your podcast from. Hey, on behalf of our entire team here, Scott Luton wishing all of y'all nothing but the best. Hey, do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. Be like the team over at Samaritan's Feet. And on that note, we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.